The threat at the edge of the universe. The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly, filled with stars, planets, and mysteries no one had ever solved. At the farthest reaches of the galaxy, a group of alien explorers drifted silently. They were the Viren, a race of beings known for their intelligence, advanced technology, and vast empire. For centuries, they had watched the universe evolve, but there was one planet they had always ignored: Earth. To them, humanity was a primitive species, unworthy of attention. But something was about to change. The Viren had long monitored planets, noting the rise and fall of civilizations. They tracked the development of technology and culture. Most species, they believed, followed a predictable pattern: advance to a certain level, then either self-destruct or be crushed by a stronger power. Humans, with their chaotic nature and constant wars, seemed to be no different. Yet, Earth was unique. The Viren had never felt the need to intervene or explore it in detail. But as time passed, they noticed something strange. A signal from Earth had caught their attention. It was faint at first, just a whisper in the void. But over time, it grew stronger, more complex. The Viren scientists examined the signal with growing concern. It was not just random noise. It was an advanced communication, unlike anything humanity had ever transmitted before. Earth was on the verge of unlocking a secret, something the Viren had hoped would remain hidden forever. The signal pointed to something buried deep beneath Earth's oceans, a powerful ancient artifact, the origins of which were unknown. The Viren had encountered similar relics before, left behind by an ancient race that once dominated the universe. These artifacts held immense power, capable of altering the fabric of reality itself. If Earth's scientists discovered the artifact and learned how to use it, the consequences could be catastrophic. Not just for Earth, but for the entire galaxy. The Viren, knowing the danger, quickly made a decision. They would no longer observe from a distance. They would act. Their fleets, powerful beyond measure, would descend upon Earth. They would seize the artifact before humanity could even comprehend its existence. The invasion would be swift and unstoppable, wiping out any resistance in moments. Humans were not ready for such power. The Viren were confident that their advanced technology would easily crush any attempts at defense. They had done it countless times before. But even as the Viren prepared their forces, there was a growing sense of unease among their commanders. They had underestimated Earth before. They had believed that humanity was nothing more than a fleeting species, primitive and weak. Yet, in the past few years, something had changed. Humans were advancing at an unprecedented rate. Their technology, once crude and rudimentary, had begun to challenge the norms of the galaxy. They had developed space-faring ships, weapons capable of reaching beyond their atmosphere, and a rapidly growing military force. The Viren commanders were uneasy. Their scouts had reported strange developments on Earth's surface. Weapons tests, unusual energy readings. The humans were building something, though no one could say exactly what. The Viren could not afford to wait and see what the humans were planning. They had to strike before it was too late. The alien fleet, massive and imposing, silently gathered at the edge of the solar system, hidden from the naked eye. It was a sight few had ever witnessed. A fleet of warships, hundreds strong, ready to lay waste to an entire planet. The Viren had no intention of making their presence known until the last moment. They would arrive without warning, overwhelming Earth's defenses before any meaningful response could be made. The humans would not even know what hit them. On Earth, however, no one suspected the impending doom. Governments around the world were focused on their own problems: resource shortages, political unrest, and the challenges of managing a rapidly changing planet. Few knew of the growing threat beyond their world. The scientific community had noticed the strange signals, but no one could have predicted the seriousness of the situation. They thought it was just another cosmic anomaly. In a high-security research facility, Dr. Maria Haywood and her team of scientists worked tirelessly to decode the strange signal. It had been received in fragments over the past few months, but the more they uncovered, the clearer it became. It was a message from somewhere far beyond Earth. Dr. Haywood was obsessed. She had been the one to make the initial discovery, and now she was determined to crack its code. She worked late into the night, staring at the digital displays in front of her, trying to make sense of the alien language. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, inputting data and running simulations. There was something undeniable about the signal. It had a purpose. It was too structured, too intentional to be random. But the more she uncovered, the more questions arose. What was it trying to say? And why had it taken so long for humanity to detect it? At that moment, she received a new alert, a breakthrough. The signal had decoded itself into a series of coordinates that led directly to a location on Earth. Dr. Haywood's heart raced. She had no idea what it meant, but she knew one thing for certain. It was not a coincidence. The artifact was real, and it was calling humanity. But she had no idea that in the depths of space, the Viren had already made their move. The moment she cracked the code, the countdown had begun. The war for Earth was about to start. The silence of space was broken only by the hum of engines as the Viren fleet advanced toward Earth. Their ships were like shadowy giants, large enough to crush entire continents, their hulls gleaming with dark metal that absorbed the light of distant stars. On board their flagship, the Viren warlords sat in a council chamber, deep in conversation. Their faces, gray and emotionless, flickered in the dim lighting as they discussed the fate of the human race. "This planet will fall in mere hours," Commander Exron said, his voice low and calculating. "Our forces are unmatched. The humans will never see us coming. Once we capture the artifact, Earth will be ours." The other commanders nodded in agreement. For them, this was just another conquest, another in a long line of worlds they had subjugated. But even as they spoke, a sense of unease lingered in the air. The humans were unpredictable. They had been underestimated before. The Viren had seen their primitive, chaotic nature and assumed it was their weakness. But was it? Commander Exron pushed the thought aside. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered. "We move out immediately. The invasion begins." Meanwhile, on Earth, life went on as usual. Cities bustled with activity. The world's political leaders argued over policies, and humanity continued its daily struggles. No one had the faintest idea that the fate of their planet was about to change forever. In the research facility where Dr. Maria Haywood worked, she was still grappling with the strange signal she had uncovered. The coordinates were clear now, but the implications of what she had found were not. She sat at her desk, staring at the screen, her mind racing. The coordinates led to an area deep within the Pacific Ocean, a location that had been deemed unremarkable by most geologists and explorers. But Maria had a feeling, an instinct, that this was no ordinary site. The signal, the artifact, everything about it seemed too deliberate to be ignored. Maria had called a meeting with her team, hoping that together they could unravel the mystery. As they gathered around her desk, she explained what she had discovered: the coordinates, the strange patterns in the signal, and the ancient technology buried beneath the ocean floor. But no one could make sense of it. They had no idea what they were dealing with. Could it be some sort of weapon? Dr. Simon, one of the senior scientists, asked, his voice trembling slightly with excitement and fear. Or maybe a power source, something so advanced that we can't even comprehend it. Maria shook her head. "I don't know, but we need to find out. This could change everything." They worked through the night, sending a deep-sea exploration team to the site. The team used the most advanced submersible technology available, capable of reaching the deepest parts of the ocean. The world watched on their screens as the footage of the ocean's depths came into view. Slowly, the camera panned down, revealing the structure of some kind, half buried beneath the ocean floor. It was not natural. It was man-made, or, rather, alien-made. "Bring the team back up," Maria shouted as the camera zoomed in on the structure, realizing the sheer scale of what they were seeing. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest. This was the moment. Humanity had stumbled upon something far more significant than they could ever have imagined. But even as the submersible ascended, the Viren had already launched their first wave. Their fleet entered Earth's atmosphere undetected by any of the planet's defenses. The Viren ships were equipped with technology far beyond anything humans had ever developed. Their cloaking devices made them invisible to radar, and their weapon systems were lethal, designed for swift and overwhelming destruction. On the ground, humanity remained blissfully unaware, but the silence in the air was about to break. A massive explosion ripped through the atmosphere. The first Viren ship had fired its weapon. It was a pinpoint strike, aimed at the heart of Earth's most vital defense system, an orbital satellite that monitored space for threats. The explosion sent shockwaves through the world's communication networks, blacking out entire regions of the planet. Panic spread like wildfire as the global defense systems went offline, leaving Earth vulnerable to the full force of the Viren invasion. In a war room in Washington, D.C., military officials scrambled to make sense of what was happening. General Marcus Shaw, the head of Earth's global defense force, stood at the center of the chaos, his face grim. The screens in front of him showed nothing but static, the communication channels with satellites now dead. The first wave of attacks had begun, and humanity had no idea where it would stop. "We've lost contact with Space Command." The voice crackled from one of the radios. Shaw's mind raced. His first instinct was to call for a counterattack. But that was impossible. Earth's military was scattered, and without the communication satellites, they were blind. The Viren had taken the high ground before anyone could react. Meanwhile, on the surface, the global chaos intensified. People across the world could feel the tremors of the explosion, though they had no idea what had caused them. People gathered in the streets, confused and frightened, staring up at the sky, which had turned an eerie shade of red as the Viren fleet descended toward Earth. Back at the research facility, Maria and her team had finally retrieved the footage from the deep-sea exploration. They sat in stunned silence, watching as the camera focused on the alien structure. It was clear that the structure was not just a relic of some long-dead civilization. It was alive. The artifact, buried for millennia, was awakening. "Do you think this is what they were trying to find?" Simon asked, fear creeping into his voice. Maria's heart sank as she realized the truth. The Viren hadn't just come to Earth by chance. They had been watching, waiting for humanity to uncover the artifact. They had always known that Earth was more than just a primitive world. Now, the very thing they feared was about to change everything. And as the Viren launched their final assault, Earth's greatest secret would be revealed. Its people were not as helpless as the galaxy had once believed. The invasion had begun. But Earth was far from defenseless. The fight for survival had only just begun. The Viren fleet descended upon Earth with relentless force, their massive ships casting long shadows over cities and landscapes below. The first wave of attacks had already crippled Earth's defenses, and their ships moved toward the planet's major cities, targeting infrastructure and military bases. The aliens were confident that they would crush humanity quickly, as they had done with countless other civilizations before. However, they had vastly underestimated Earth's resilience. What the Viren did not know was that deep beneath the planet's surface, in the heart of the Pacific Ocean, a long-forgotten power had been stirred by the artifact. Something ancient, something powerful, something that humans had never fully understood, was awakening. Maria Haywood and her team, still reeling from the shocking discovery of the alien structure beneath the ocean, gathered around their screens, desperately trying to make sense of the artifact's power. They had learned that this relic was not just a piece of ancient technology. It was a key that could unlock Earth's greatest secret. "We don't fully understand it yet," Maria said, her voice trembling slightly. "But we have to keep trying. This artifact, it's not just for us. It's meant for them." Her words echoed in the room, leaving a heavy silence. The Viren were not just attacking Earth. They were after the artifact. The more Maria thought about it, the more it became clear. The aliens had known of its existence for ages, but they had waited until now, until humanity discovered it. What did the Viren want with it? Why had they come to Earth? "Prepare the launch system," Maria ordered as the panic started to set in. They were running out of time. The Viren were moving faster than anyone could have predicted, and humanity had no way to defend itself. All they had was the ancient power they had unearthed. Meanwhile, in Earth's war rooms, General Marcus Shaw had activated the Global Defense Forces. What was left of the military forces scrambled to make a stand, though their chances were slim without proper communication or satellite support. Military leaders were in constant panic, trying to make sense of what was happening. The first strike had caused complete chaos, and their systems were not responding. It felt as though they were fighting an unseen enemy in a world plunged into darkness. "General Shaw, we're blind," one of the commanders shouted over the radio. "We can't even locate the ships. The alien fleet is moving too fast, and we have nothing to counter them with." Shaw's mind raced. What could they do? It seemed like the planet was doomed. Humanity's forces were scattered, disoriented, and barely holding on. But there was something else, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. It was as though the Earth itself had started to fight back. Without warning, the ground beneath his feet trembled. At first, it was a slight vibration, but within seconds, it became a violent shaking, a deep rumble that echoed through the entire facility. The soldiers in the room staggered, trying to keep their balance. The lights flickered and dimmed as the shaking intensified. "What the hell is happening?" one of the soldiers yelled, looking at the monitors. Then something unbelievable appeared on the screens. A massive, swirling energy field had emerged, stretching high into the atmosphere. "Sir, you need to see this," another officer called out, his voice filled with awe. The image on the screen showed what looked like a wave of intense energy spreading from deep within the Earth's core. It was as if the planet itself had unleashed a force so powerful that it could rival anything the Viren fleet had ever encountered. The energy continued to expand, engulfing the area around it. The Viren ships, which had been hovering above Earth's cities, suddenly started to lose their stability. The energy field interfered with their ship systems, making their cloaking devices flicker. The Viren fleet, once so confident, now faced a challenge they hadn't anticipated. "What is this?" Commander Exeron's voice cracked through the comms, his face twisted in anger. "We didn't plan for this." The alien fleet's technology, so far superior to anything Earth had ever seen, began to malfunction. Their ships, once invisible and invulnerable, flickered into view, revealing their massive structures. The energy wave was growing larger, and its effects were felt throughout the alien fleet. Their weapon systems began to misfire, and the once immense power of their ships now seemed fragile. The first signs of panic rippled through the Viren forces. On the ground, humanity witnessed the strange phenomenon unfolding before their eyes. As the energy field spread across Earth's atmosphere, people in cities around the world stared up, bewildered and fearful. The sky seemed to swirl, as if alive with energy. And then, all at once, the ground beneath them seemed to buckle. The world watched in stunned silence as Earth itself fought back. The oceans churned violently, and earthquakes shook cities to their core. The very planet that had been thought weak, fragile, and unprepared for battle was now revealing the hidden strength that not even the Viren had expected. The energy seemed to pulse with a strange rhythm, as though the Earth itself was alive and had finally awoken to defend its inhabitants. General Shaw, still recovering from the shock of what he had witnessed, turned to his commanders. "This is it," he said, his voice firm now. "Earth isn't just going to sit back and die. It's fighting for us. We need to capitalize on this." As the world watched the sky twist and turn with energy, the Viren fleet began to lose control. Their ships, once perfectly coordinated, now flew erratically. One by one, They began to drop from the sky, falling to Earth like stones, their systems overloaded by the strange force emanating from the planet. The Viren were no longer the predators. They were the prey. But the battle was far from over. As the Viren ships fell, the ground beneath them was still shaking. Earth's energy was vast, but the Viren had not been defeated completely. They still had weapons, deadly weapons, and they would fight until the last of their forces was crushed. In the research lab, Maria stared at the screens in disbelief. The artifact, the key, was doing something unimaginable. It wasn't just an ancient power source. It was the trigger. The Earth's reaction to the Viren was just the beginning. If they didn't find a way to harness the energy, the planet's retaliation might not just stop the Viren. It could change everything, for better or worse. As the Viren ships began to fall, the world waited. The fight had only just begun. Earth was no longer the weak planet the aliens had laughed at. It had become the most dangerous world in the galaxy. The Earth had been transformed into a battleground. What was once a peaceful planet, filled with people who lived their lives without fear of alien invaders, now found itself thrust into the chaotic reality of war. The Viren, despite their technological superiority, were struggling to maintain control. The mysterious force emanating from the heart of the planet was overwhelming their advanced weaponry, disabling their ships one by one. And yet, they weren't ready to give up. They had invaded countless worlds before, and they wouldn't let Earth stand in their way. General Marcus Shaw stood in the war room, eyes fixed on the holographic display of the battlefield. His mind raced with calculations and possibilities. He had seen the change in the alien fleet. They were disoriented, their once formidable command structure in shambles. Yet they were not retreating. In fact, they seemed to be regrouping, preparing for something far worse. "This isn't over," Shaw muttered to himself. "They'll be back with a vengeance." Indeed, the Viren had begun to recover. They had activated emergency protocols, and while many of their ships had fallen, the fleet was far from destroyed. New ships from the outer edges of their empire began to emerge from the darkness of space, reinforcing their position. The tide was turning, but the humans were not backing down. Across the globe, Earth's citizens were in a state of turmoil. The initial shock of the alien invasion had left many in fear, but now, with Earth fighting back, there was a glimmer of hope. Nations united in ways they never had before. The Viren had underestimated human ingenuity, and the people of Earth were using every resource at their disposal to fight back. Maria Haywood's research team had been working tirelessly, trying to understand the artifact's power. The energy emanating from it was unlike anything they had ever encountered, and the more they studied it, the more they realized that it wasn't just a power source. It was a weapon, but not one that could be controlled easily. The artifact, it seemed, had its own will. It responded to the planet's need for defense, but it didn't discriminate. No one knew if it would help humanity or destroy everything in its path. "We need to figure this out," Maria said, her voice tense. "The artifact is our only chance. If we can stabilize the energy, we might be able to amplify it, give our forces a fighting chance." Her team worked around the clock, feverishly trying to decipher the ancient symbols and blueprints left behind in the artifact. They had no idea what the Viren were doing, but Maria suspected they were also trying to unlock the artifact's secrets. What would happen if they succeeded? What would the Viren do with such power? Meanwhile, General Shaw had ordered his forces to prepare for a counteroffensive. The Viren were reorganizing, their reinforcements coming in faster than expected. Earth's defenses were still weak, but now, with the energy field still fluctuating and the artifact's mysterious power slowly being harnessed, they had a chance. "We're not going to let them take this planet," Shaw said, his voice hard with determination. Back on the battlefield, the human forces were doing their best to fight back. Though their technology was nowhere near as advanced as the Viren's, their spirit and resourcefulness made up for it. Soldiers and civilians alike stood together, using everything they had: improvised weapons, old fighter jets, and tanks that had been pulled from military reserves. Every single one of them was ready to fight and die for Earth. But it wasn't just the humans who were fighting. Deep in the Earth's core, where the artifact was buried, something was changing. The ancient power that had been dormant for millennia was stirring, and its effects were beginning to spread outward. The ground trembled again, but this time it was different. The energy was not just a wave anymore. It was a concentrated pulse, an intense burst of raw power that seemed to push back the very forces of the universe. It radiated outward in ripples, like shockwaves that reached far beyond the planet's surface. The Viren felt it first. Their ships, already reeling from the earlier attacks, began to shake violently as the energy field expanded, overwhelming their systems once again. This was not just a battle between two species anymore. It was as if the Earth itself was fighting for survival. One by one, Viren ships faltered. Shields flickered and collapsed under the pressure. Their weapons systems malfunctioned. Communication lines went dead. The once pristine warships, capable of obliterating entire cities with a single strike, now plummeted toward the surface in disarray, crashing into the ocean and land. "Commander, we can't keep up with this," a Viren officer screamed, watching as their entire fleet began to crumble. "The Earth's energy, it's too powerful." The Viren were not accustomed to losing, and certainly not by the hands of a primitive species like humanity. Yet here they were, scrambling to maintain control as their ships were reduced to smoldering wreckage. Their leadership had never anticipated such a scenario. The Earth was supposed to be a simple conquest, a weak planet that would fall before their might. But the Earth was far from weak. General Shaw's eyes narrowed as he watched the destruction unfold. He knew the tide was turning, but the Viren weren't done. Not yet. He ordered the human forces to press forward, launching a ground assault to reclaim the cities that had been lost. The people of Earth, now united under a single banner, were fighting with everything they had. The human race was not going down without a fight. Back at the research facility, Maria and her team had made a breakthrough. They had discovered the final sequence in the artifact's design. If they could synchronize it with Earth's magnetic fields, they could amplify its power. They were close, so close to unlocking a weapon that could finally rid Earth of the alien threat. But they didn't have much time. The Viren were regrouping, and their second wave of reinforcements was already on the way. "We have to do it now," Maria said urgently. "If we can't stabilize the artifact in time, we might lose everything." The stage was set. Earth had fought back, and now humanity's survival depended on unlocking the artifact's full potential. Would it be enough to destroy the Viren, or would it tear the planet apart? Only time would tell. The world held its breath as the final battle for Earth's future began. The war had reached a critical point. Earth's resistance had rallied with unexpected ferocity, forcing the once unstoppable Viren to reconsider their invasion strategy. The alien ships, battered and broken, drifted in orbit like fallen titans, their power waning. On the surface, humans had reclaimed several cities, pushing the invaders back, but they knew the battle was far from won. The Viren were not a species that gave up easily. General Marcus Shaw stood at the command center, his eyes fixated on the holographic display of the battlefield. He had seen countless soldiers fall, and he had witnessed the destruction of entire cities, but the determination in his people's eyes kept him going. Earth was fighting back, not just with weapons, but with a strength that the Viren could never have predicted. And now, the Earth had one final weapon, something that no one, not even the aliens, could fully comprehend. Maria Haywood and her team had finally cracked the code of the artifact. After days of intense research, they had discovered that the energy field it produced was more than just a defensive mechanism. It was an amplifier, one that could focus Earth's gravitational pull into a single point of intense force. If activated correctly, it would unleash a wave of power capable of crushing anything that came into its path. It was not just a weapon. It was a force of nature, a reflection of Earth's will to survive. But there was a catch. The artifact's power was unstable, and there was no guarantee that it would work as intended. If they miscalculated, it could rip the planet apart. If they succeeded, it could wipe out the remaining Viren forces in a single devastating blow. As the final battle loomed, Shaw gave his orders. The humans were not only fighting to defend their homes, they were fighting to save everything they had ever known. The soldiers, united and resolute, prepared for the assault that would determine the future of Earth. The Viren, meanwhile, were preparing for one last offensive. They had suffered losses, yes, but they were not without resources. The remaining warships in orbit began to move in formation, their cannons charging with deadly intent. They had underestimated humanity once before, and they were not about to make that mistake again. This time, they would annihilate the planet, once and for all. But something was different now. The Earth was no longer just a planet of weak, primitive creatures. It had become something more, a living, breathing force that was fighting back. And at the heart of it all was the artifact. Its energy had begun to pulse with an intensity that resonated through the core of the planet, sending tremors through the ground and the sky. Maria stood in the control room, her hands shaking as she stared at the monitor. The artifact was activated. The energy readings were off the charts. There was no turning back now. "It's time," she whispered. With a final press of a button, the artifact's energy was released. The pulse that radiated from it was like nothing anyone had ever witnessed before. The ground trembled as the force expanded, growing stronger with every passing second. A wave of energy shot outwards, rippling through the atmosphere and stretching into space. It was as though the very fabric of reality had been twisted and bent by Earth's will. The Viren fleet, caught off guard by the sudden onslaught, was completely unprepared. The shockwave from the artifact hit their ships with a force that shattered their shields and disabled their systems. One by one, their warships began to fall, crashing into each other or into the surface of the planet. Their once mighty fleet was nothing more than wreckage floating in space. General Shaw watched in awe as the destruction unfolded before his eyes. Earth's gravity, amplified by the artifact, was crushing the Viren ships. They had no defense against it. The tide had truly turned. But the battle was not yet over. The Viren had one final weapon in reserve, a massive mothership, larger than any of the others. It had been hidden behind the moon, waiting for the right moment to strike. Now, as the human forces celebrated their victory, the mothership emerged, its cannons charging with an intensity that could obliterate entire cities in a single blast. "We have to stop it," Shaw said urgently, his voice cold with resolve. "This isn't over yet." The humans had no choice but to launch a desperate counterattack. Fighter jets and ground forces were mobilized, racing toward the mothership before it could fire. But the Viren were relentless. The mothership's weapons opened fire, sending blasts of energy streaking through the sky, leveling entire districts and sending shockwaves across the battlefield. Maria, now coordinating the final phase of the artifact's activation, realized that they could use the same force to target the mothership. It was risky, but it was their only chance. With only minutes to spare, she ordered the final sequence to be initiated. The energy from the artifact intensified, a blinding flash of light filling the sky as it became a focused beam. The ground beneath their feet cracked open, and the very air seemed to distort as the power surged upward. The beam, a concentrated force of Earth's will, shot toward the mothership, piercing through the void of space. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The alien mothership, once so imposing and powerful, was now at the mercy of Earth's gravity. The beam collided with the ship's shields, and for a split second, it held. But then, the shields collapsed under the sheer weight of the force. The ship's hull began to buckle, and with a final deafening explosion, the mothership was torn apart. The battle was over. The Earth had won. General Shaw stood amidst the rubble, his heart racing as he watched the Viren forces retreating into the darkness of space. The war was over. Earth had proven its strength, and the alien invaders had been sent packing. But even as the victory was celebrated, there was a quiet understanding that the Earth had changed forever. The artifact had unlocked a power that no one had ever truly understood. It had saved humanity, but at what cost? The humans had fought back, using the very forces of nature to protect their home. But in doing so, they had awakened something ancient and powerful. The war may have ended, but the future was uncertain. What other dangers lay in wait, hidden beneath the surface of the earth, waiting to be discovered? For now, humanity had triumphed. But the question remained, what would they do with their newfound power?